Garcia's down! Sean Strickland with a massive KO!
You know, if it wasn't UFC, I'd probably be cooking meth in a trailer in prison, so.
All right, next question. Do you believe fat shaming is okay if the person you're fat shaming is someone you love?
I think fat shaming is always okay.
Sean Strickland is quickly rising to become one of the most controversial superstars of the UFC middleweight division, and it's his disturbing childhood stories, huge adversities in his career, and his brutally honest way of speaking that makes him one of the most unlikely yet most interesting fighters in the UFC. And understanding the disturbing history of Sean Strickland's life definitely opens a new perspective on him. Growing up in Corona, California, Sean had everything but a loving childhood. Born on the 27th of February in 1991, the 32-year-old has shared disturbing stories about his father, who was extremely abusive towards himself, and his mum, all throughout his childhood.
Like I remember like hugging my mom's leg, you know, in the kitchen, like pre-elementary school. My dad all drunk, telling my mom, like, I'm gonna cut you up little pieces, bury you in the backyard in a bottle of acid. So like you grow up and you hear that day in, day out from like my earliest memory.
Sean has also actually admitted that he thinks MMA is a dumb sport, and the sole reason he loves MMA and is an elite level fighter in the UFC comes from the trauma he experienced from his dad.
But you love it?
No, I love it, man. I love being violent. I like hurting people. It's one of those weird things where it's like, you know, like your psychological makeup allows you to like it, but as an intelligent thinking man, it's retarded.
Sean went on to explain in the same interview that he began pursuing MMA when he was a teenager, and one day at the age of 18, decided that it was time to stand up to his abusive father once and for all. So one day, Sean woke up to hear the usual abuse from his dad towards his mum, to which Sean headbutted and broke his dad's nose. But it's what Sean's dad did next that surprised him the most, because instead of fighting back, Sean's dad simply began crying in defeat, to which Sean described as feeling like what was supposed to be the boogeyman in his life was now just nothing other than a disappointment that he had expected way more from. And from that moment, Sean and his mum finally moved away from his dad, and Sean began taking his MMA career much more seriously. Because at this point, Sean was already a professional MMA fighter who had both his professional debut and first professional win at the age of just 17 in the King of the Cage organization. He would then go on to remain undefeated and become the promotion's middleweight champion just a few years later in 2012, to which he defended the title 3 times. And soon enough, Sean got signed to the UFC, where he had his debut fight on March 15th, 2014 against Bubba McDaniel, to which he won by a rear naked choke submission. Over the next few years, Sean would solidify his position in the UFC, earning a very respectable UFC record of 7 wins and 3 losses by October 2018, but it was what happened next that almost completely ended his career forever. Because after a sparring session in December 2018, Sean was riding home on his motorbike before a van crashed into him at speeds of over 45 miles per hour. Sean was severely injured in the accident and was diagnosed with a torn patella, kneecap displacement, and a tear in his quadriceps. And Sean described that he had even left some of his kneecap on the road. He was unconscious for hours after the incident, and after undergoing immediate emergency surgery on his leg, Sean was told that he was likely to never compete in MMA professionally ever again. But MMA was Sean's life, and he was determined to make a return to the octagon. And after 2 years of recovery and persistence, Sean proved everyone wrong, and since his return has fought some of the top fighters in the UFC in several main events, and has a very impressive current record of 27 wins and just 5 losses, and has also now earned himself a title shot against Israel Adesanya, which is set to undertake in September 2023.
Fight for a belt, you guys. Izzy, come on. Izzy with the titties, I gotta fight you.
But Sean's impressive MMA record isn't the only reason he's been in the spotlight, because Sean Strickland is very well known for his brutal honesty and the very controversial statements he makes.
What am I saying?
Hello.
Meow. I feel like I should already start. How do I say work harder, child? How do I get to the meat and potatoes of work harder? No food for you till you finish.
And these types of comments are pretty much guaranteed whenever there's an interview with Sean Strickland.
I'm not saying that the world will be a better place than more me, but you guys need to get hit by your dads a little bit more. Not even hit, not discipline. You guys don't need to be like, I didn't take out the trash, hit. You guys need to get like an alcoholic rage beating, and then you'll start
learning how to have, nuts.
And Sean is no stranger to conflict with the public.
You're telling me I'm the boss. What, so you got a gun? Is that what we got? I will match that right now. What you show me. I'll match it. I'll fight you for it. Come on, bro. Why do we gotta do that, bro? Why do we gotta do that?
You are the rudest person I
Go
ever
call
met.
do you have a boyfriend or a son you can call over here?
Yeah, I do. He works for the government.
Get the fuck out of here.
You really have
Oh.
to get these nice
Yeah, please do, you dumb.
Sean's controversy in his interviews and with the general public have definitely had a huge impact on both his image and honestly, his popularity as a fighter. At this point, he has been involved in many beefs with other UFC fighters and is no stranger to calling someone out and telling them exactly what he thinks. It doesn't matter if they're a random person on the street or an interviewer, Sean isn't afraid of what anyone thinks of him.
You know what, man? I got some brain damage this fight and I welcome it. It feels good to get hit in the head. I feel like I earned my paycheck this time. I'm a dog, man. You point me in the direction, pay me money and tell me to bite and I do it.
Win bonus or
No, I know win bonus too, but they pay me good, you guys. They pay me more money than this white trash motherfucker should ever be making. You know what I'm saying?
To date, Sean Strickland has made about $1.5 million from his UFC career, and as he continues to climb the UFC rankings, his paychecks only continue to grow, with his most recent fight against Abus Magomedov at UFC Vegas 76, earning him around $321,000. But regardless, he stays humble with his winnings.
You motherfucker said I needed furniture. Look at this couch. Is it secondhand? Yes, it is, but I don't care.
And after planning to buy a Hellcat after his fight with Alex Pereira at UFC 276, due to the outcome, Sean had to make a change of plan.
I'm here with my boy Diego, right? And I was like, after this fight, I'm gonna buy me a Hellcat, 700 horsepower, all the bling. But then I got knocked the out. So now I'm, what is this? My Hyundai accent? What is this thing?
So anyway, Sean is now set to fight Israel Adesanya for the middleweight title at UFC 293, and without a doubt, this will be both the biggest fight of his career and win or lose, the biggest paycheck.
I just like to make fun of him, like a lot of is not true, like maybe the steroids aren't true, but the off the cartoons is true, so it's like...
And that's facts.
So he might still get that Hellcat after all. UFC, and despite the obstacles and controversies of his career, it's safe to say he's in the peak of his career and he may in fact become the new middleweight champion of the UFC.
I'm gonna give you guys some advice. Showering with your AK is the most American thing you can do.